shaman is somebody who serves their community, and not just the human community, but they're dedicated to reciprocity, the balance of what we give and what we receive, what we take. And that's such an important medicine for our time.
Excellent. Welcome into Chi Time, Yaacov Darlin Khan.
Thank you.
Pleasure. What an honor! What a thrill, and deep respect to you, brother. I mean, the amount of teachings that you're bringing through for us, and you know, I know that you are one of the world's foremost purveyor of movement medicine, and you've got an amazing website going on. You're on your second book now. You know, a very established member of the shamanic community, and yet you're so personable and so easy to connect with and get on with. And how do you do that?
Well, I've met too many people who got lost in believing their own publicity. So I have a lot of elders, and particularly two elders who we asked when we began, Susannah and I, the School of Movement Medicine in 2007. We asked them to, in fact, we gave them like a golden pin and said, if you see us blowing up our own bubbles, like and becoming very important, self-important, please use the pin and bring us down to earth. And they do regularly. They're very funny. They're the absolute quintessential elders growing old disgracefully.
Marvelous.
Very, very wise. They grow all their own food. He's a professor. They ran an amazing green business. They're incredible people, and they keep our feet on the ground if we ever start to lose it.
Oh, that is brilliant. And I bet them they do it with humor in such a way that doesn't disempower you.
Oh, not at all.
No,
You have to have a sense of humor. By the time if you're doing this kind of work where you are wanting to really awaken to who you actually are and what's inside you and what matters to you, it's a prerequisite to have a sense of humor and be able to laugh at ourselves. And sometimes that's easy, and other times it's not. And I notice for myself that the deeper I go on my own journey, the stronger I'm becoming, the more I need to develop and do my own shadow work. You know, it never ends. It never ends. I'm just a human being. We're all just human beings doing our best. That's how it is.
That's so true. And if we're all doing our best, and that we're not in competition with one another, we're doing the best that we can for ourselves. And you know, is this been a story of our lives, really? I mean, when did you first realize that you were becoming a shaman?
Well, I think, you know, that's such a multi-layered experience. I think as a child, if I'd have had the language for it, or I'd have been in a culture where shamanism was still practiced and still woven into the fabric of everyday life, I would have known that, because I was always into my number one thing was dreaming, was the great mystery, was, you know, my nighttime experience was much more real than my daytime experience. My dreaming was much more where I felt at home, and then, you know, I'd had a long journey, and because in our culture the essence of shamanism has been eroded by mainstream religion, and then by the scientific mind. And this is not at all a criticism of the scientific mind. I think the rational mind is a very important part of a shaman's world, and if you don't have that basis, you're in big trouble. But the re-owning or the rediscovery of what shamanism is in the modern world. For me, was 30 years of adventure and difficulty and ironing out all those distorted senses of self. Because, I was fascinated once I discovered shamanism existed. I was like, oh, great, I could be a shaman. But I had no idea what it meant. If I'd have known, I'd have probably ran the other way very quickly. Like, get me out of here! This is mad. This is frightening. This is, there's the feelings of, because a shaman, well, and we'll talk about the inner shaman, I guess, later. But a shaman is somebody who serves their community, and not just the human community, but they're dedicated to reciprocity, the balance of what we give and what we receive, what we take. And that's such an important medicine for our time. So it was really a difficult journey, and it still is at times, especially these times.
Well, quite. Talking about like the scientist and the shaman, you did a lovely talk the other day with Dr. David Hamilton, and yeah, what a marvelous man he is. But it was great to see his connection with shamanism, and then the effect that had. I mean, I noticed that he was telling us his stuff at the beginning. He was full of all this information and excitement, and then you spoke, and then the next time he spoke, he'd gone, whoa, everything's much calmer now. And that he really recognized that.
He laughed about that. He said,
Yeah.
I get very excited. And he's got this
Yeah.
fabulous Scottish accent. I
He
love him to
does.
pieces.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
such a bright, kind, really incisive, precise mind, but aligned with that kindness. So his whole research life has led him towards understanding the importance of kindness and the power we have, or the relationship between the body and the mind. Yeah, he's an amazing man.
Exactly. Thank you. Thank you. Sorry, we've got slight technical things going on here, but we're running it. And this is reminding me. So moving on from science and shamanism, because there's a whole lot of meeting going on here, isn't there? The meeting of truth that is happening. And throughout your book, the new one, Shaman, you're talking about awakening the dancer within. And when we awaken to music and dancing and movement, this helps to shift the emotions that can get stuck, and how key some form of movement is. It's not all just working out with the mind, it's actually embodying different emotions.
This is really key, and especially now when there's so much fear, individual fear and collective fear, and fear being pumped into the world through all the channels of what to be afraid of. And it is a scary time. It's an overwhelming time. And I know for myself, without my own practice, I do, Susannah and I get up early in the morning. We spend the first 3 hours of the day in practice. Like before breakfast, before 9 o'clock, just to be as grounded as we can be in what's going on in the world. And see, shamanism is indigenous to its culture. It addresses the wounds of the disconnect between soul and body, or between spirit and body. And that's, in the industrial world, that disconnect between the brilliance of the mind and the brilliance of the body. And then, of course, the place in the middle where they meet, which is the heart, our feelings, our emotional intelligence. If we don't, those of us who've been brought up in the industrial world, if we don't engage the body and the intelligence of the body, then our ideas are, they can be brilliant, they can be amazingly creative, they are, but they take us away from the recognition of the impact that's happening underneath our own 2 feet. So working through the body is of absolute primary importance to anyone interested in shamanic practice who's grown up in the industrial world. It's so vital to be able to feel your feet, to engage with the rhythm, to let go inside the rhythm, to give yourself to a greater power in the form of rhythm, music, melody, and to dance, like to sweat, to engage your muscles and your blood and get everything going. And if because what happens if we don't? The body has a capacity to stretch and to change and to cope with so much. But when there's so much emotion, especially if we have in us, which we all do in one way or another, stories from the past that are undigested, our own personal biography, our ancestral biography, the journey that life has taken. If we don't engage with that, then when we're in a stressful situation, what happens is we just go into that default mode, which is coping. And we cope in different ways. Many people disassociate. They're just gone from presence and to survive. And it's a very appropriate survival mechanism when we are actually being threatened. But it's hard for us if we don't engage the body and reclaim the territory of the body. It's hard for us then to know the fear that I'm feeling now, or the emotion that I'm feeling now, is that present? Do I really need to be on high alert right now, like watching out for that tiger that's coming around the corner? Or is this, my animal intelligence and my history taking over the present moment? And if we don't do our healing work through the body to reclaim, to empty out the muscle, to massage the muscle, the lymph, the bones, the spaciousness within us through movement, then we just get full. We're full up, and then we can't cope so well. And then we're just in that default mode of, how do we survive the day?
Wow, thank you. So many places we can go from here. I'm just going to mention dancing from different parts of your body, all in the book, The Shaman. Love it, love it. And this new word for full body listening, interoception. Oh, that's the word, isn't it?
It is the word, and it is I have to say, of all the practice I've ever done in my life, and Susannah actually discovered in our household the word interoception many, many years ago through reading a scientific journal. It was, and she found this word, and it started off a whole inquiry. And interoception means literally perception of the interior. How capable am I of being able to describe in language the physical experience that I'm having? Like maybe my shoulder feels a little bit hot and I feel a little vibration in there, or my belly feels, or my solar plexus feels a bit tight, or it's got fireworks moving through it. Like, to find the language of the body, it's far from it being purely a selfish pastime. It's actually the ground of our capacity to be present, and it's the ground of our capacity to have empathy for another. So important. I mean, it's always important, but it's particularly important now when we're in this situation. So this meditation, being able to shift our attention from thinking about our experience to being in our experience and being able to describe that, that's the foundation for all shamanic practice. It's the real ground, because otherwise you're off in amazing, magical other worlds and experiences, but there's no one to bring it home to.
Yeah, well, this brings us beautifully to the Inner Shaman then, doesn't it? Which is really all about what's going on in your new book, Shaman. and the inner tuition that is there for us, and the wisdom that's inside each and every one of us, if we can give ourselves time to explore it. And you take us through some wonderful processes and practices in this book. Thank you so much for creating it.
Well, you're really welcome. I've got a copy here. I'm just going to show you so you can
Yeah,
see
do.
because this is like it's a real invocation, this book, and I'm the timing is good. The timing is good, and it's an invocation of every human being's capacity to connect to that natural space inside them, or that archetypal force that is the inner shaman. The inner shaman is an archetype. It's not the same as being a shaman for your community. That's, a lifetime of training. In my case, so far, 33 years and ongoing. And I think I don't think that ever stops. I hope not. But the inner shaman, we all have access to, just with a little bit of being willing to challenge the status quo of our perception, being willing to be a little bit uncomfortable. Like, for instance, when I started to do this kind of embodiment work, the idea of dancing in front of people was horrific to me. I couldn't, I was like, oh my God, I can't, why would I dance? It's like, what's the point? What am I doing? Just moving my body around in strange shapes. What's this all about? And I felt deeply uncomfortable about my body, about being in my body. So I had this whole story that dancing was over there somewhere and it belonged to other people, except for, well, when I was a teenager, if I was a little bit drunk, then I could just about be dragged onto a dance floor to do a pogo or a mosh pit or something. But to dance, to meditate, was deeply uncomfortable. So I know what it's like to have to. I discovered that it wasn't dance or movement that I was uncomfortable about. It was self-consciousness. That's what I was uncomfortable about. Like, what do people think? What will people think if I let my body move to the rhythm like apparently it wants to? That was the great shock for me. When I was first on a dance floor with Gabrielle Roth, which was in 1988, in a dojo in London with about 20 other people. Those days, Gabrielle's workshops were really small as well. And I, I discovered very quickly with her guidance that apparently there's a dancer inside this body. And all it needs is a little bit of permission and a little bit of being willing to challenge that self-consciousness or be kind with it. And then before you know it, if you can shift your attention again from thinking about it to the experience of the body moving, which isn't difficult, it's really not difficult. The practice is to keep it there for long enough to really take a journey. But that's just like learning to ride a bike. You just have to want it. And you want it, then you'll have it. You develop the attention, the focus necessary to keep on following this essential nature that's already connected to the elements, that's connected to the tree of life, that's connected to our ancestors, that's connected to our guidance systems, physical and non-physical, that's connected to our dreaming, that's connected to our hearts and I call it the animal intelligence of the shaman's heart, that's connected to our integrity, that's connected to boundaries, that's connected to all these things that the inner shaman knows already because they are earth. They are the light of the sun. They are the waters of life. They are breath. They are the spirit embodied. And they are aware of themselves as part of this web of life. They know themselves as interconnected, something that our species is having to find out about through this pandemic. Um, Actually, we can't separate from the market in Wuhan or the our family in Spain, or it's we are part of a one planet, part of one family of life, and um, this beautiful indigenous um, incantation, which says, you know, I what I do to you, I do to myself. What I do to the earth, I do to myself. This understanding is growing in our world, and the inner shaman knows. And yeah, this book is an invocation of that. It's an invitation for you, for all of us, to discover that in your own way that's really um, appropriate for where you are. So, step by step, we can deepen our knowledge of that. And it's so rich, that landscape. And it gives us so much in terms of our empowerment, our capacity to take responsibility and then to harvest what we dream, what we're here for, what we are here, not just to learn or to take, but to contribute.
Mm. Yeah, definitely. Yaacov, darling, calm with us on Chi Time here, talking about the appropriateness of shamanism in 21st century world. And you said earlier that your book was very timely. It's super timely. I mean, you couldn't have timed that better. The amount of people who are really picking up the wisdom again. I mean, maybe I'm going to flash this gorgeous book because that's a couple of years back now. Jaguar in the body, butterfly in the heart. Um, that taught us a lot, but to come round again with this call to find the inner shaman, especially now when there's so much sort of, being called to be at home a lot, and how we can then do some work on ourselves, but then have support. So that connection, are we really isolated? There's that whole isolation thing, but yet people seem to be connecting more and more. I mean, it's just
Yeah,
phenomenal, isn't it?
it is. It's really a more accurate way rather than social distancing. It's more physical distancing and social connection. You know, I obviously we're all, I imagine, aware of all different kinds of groups of people who are um, affected by what's going on. We're all affected, but some people are affected in much more severe ways or more difficult ways. And one of those groups of people that I was really imagining were going to be having a really hard time was the elder people who are living alone. And I'm sure there are many who are lonely and having a hard time not being able to see their families and to be in touch. But I've also read that a lot of older people who were feeling isolated before this pandemic are actually feeling much less isolated. They're being recognized, and people knocking on their doors and bringing them food and asking, "How are you?" And this is amazing. This refocusing of what matters within our society, and the older people, and the nurses, the health, the people working in health. God, what heroes these people are! Like getting up every day, going to work, risking their lives on behalf of our well-being. It's an extraordinary thing, and I know for me, I feel how as much as I'm incredibly blessed. I feel I have to be honest. Sometimes I feel guilty about how blessed I am. I'm living in Devon. I've got you know a field outside my front door that I can walk in and be out in nature and receive the spring. And there's so many people who just don't have that and have a real difficulty. And I I just heard him in my head. I used to have a Tai Chi teacher called Dr. Kells, He was a very large Irish, wonderful Tai Chi master. And he used to say to me, you know, guilt is only useful if it makes you act differently, if it makes you do something. And I don't act out of guilt. I act out of my love of life. But at the same time, that guilt makes me kind of go, Yaacov, what have you got here that you can share? What can you give? And that's the, in a way, the deepest grace of life is discovering what we have inside us that's ours to share, and finding the way to share it. And I feel very blessed that in this time there are ways like we're doing right now to say hi, to reach out to people to who are who are needing um, to be remembered, to be recognized in their own experience. We all need that. You know, I think that's one of the things we might learn from this is how important it is to recognize the value of each other, what we give, how we are with each other. You know, you mentioned that talk that I did with David Hamilton the other day, and he said that kindness has a contagion factor that's twice as strong as the coronavirus. And I don't know how they measure that, but apparently the coronavirus has a contagion factor of 2.5. It means 2.5 people on average can be infected, but apparently kindness infects 5 people. Um, I'd love to know how they measure such things, but I thought it was a beautiful um, painting he painted for us of reality, how um, powerful we are, and how powerful the choices are that we make. Kindness to the body, kindness to our own feelings, kindness to settle the mind, kindness to one another, recognition of one another. That's, and you know, I feel very blessed to be alive in this time, to experience that actually, you know, there's more to us human beings than we may have thought. I feel far more hopeful about our species than I did a month ago.
I'm with you on that. Now that the shock, the initial shock is, not as initial as it was, and we are getting more used to, okay, and human beings are so adaptable. We can adapt and we can do it. And when we're all in something together, we hold each other's hand more, and that there's that value for one another. We pick up the phone more often, we maybe make contact more. I mean, it's astonishing. And we can do these kind of Zoom chats and stuff, and Zoom rooms. And, with this call to, because you have your new 21 Gratitudes study hub running very, very soon, isn't it? 10th of April, that's starting?
It is we're basically opening the doors for a week between the 10th and 17th of April. We've made obviously we've adapted the whole thing to meet what's going on now, especially financially. We slashed the prices of it because we lost all our income. We know many people who did too, and a lot of people having a difficult time. But the study hub is really it's a chance to be part of an online community, to study movement medicine, to study this inner shaman work, to receive teachings on a regular bite-sized chunk basis every month, and then to move together, to have really good opportunities to shake out and to practice that fluidity, to be able to do all of these things. It's quite something. It really is.
It is. And you had that amazing dance on Saturday night, the Tribal Heart that I was part of, and I just love the fact that it's actually this is my dance floor as well as my studio and everything, and it's becoming a really sacred zone in there that has a lot of fun going on in it. But because you can see other people also cutting their rugs and doing their stuff as well, you feel like that. I love being on dance floors with people as well. Don't get me wrong, but this is kind of like, oh, and some, and then you were sorting out the music. You had the levels of music going really well as well, so the quality was superb.
We've worked so hard to find the right technology to be able to that people can plug their computers into a speaker at home and actually have really good sound, really good guidance, and the visual of us. And then if they want to be on Zoom at the same time, so you can be together, but the sound comes through another channel. It's very simple and it's all described very straightforwardly.
It's amazing.
But it's been quite, the amount,
Technical
the
thing.
speed at which we're having to learn.
I know.
It's
Tell
really
me
fun.
about it. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness. I mean, this has been live on Facebook. It's probably had to be uploaded about 8 times now because for some reason it's dropping out every 4 minutes. And you're like, I haven't got time to go into why that's happening because we're in this flow of conversation, but it's like, come on, tech, keep up.
Well, can you imagine, the internet and all those servers, they were built for how we were 6 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And the
Yeah.
amount of people online now,
Yeah.
it's an amazing thing that we have this World Wide Web. All the indigenous shamans I meet, they always, for years, they've been telling me, it's fantastic that you guys have created the internet. Of course, it can be used for harm as well as for good, but
Like anything.
it is like anything. It's but it's a physical manifestation of the World Wide Web. It's extraordinary. We're
It
connected to
is.
that worldwide, universal matrix of wisdom, if you like. Um,
Yeah.
yeah, it's amazing.
And we can use it in the way that makes sense. So just before we go, just going back to your point where we were talking about embodying emotions, and if we're wanting to create a new reality altogether, the sort of world that we really want, people say, yeah, you need to dream in your reality, you need to vision it in. Is it enough to vision in, or do we need to embody that and dance it in?
I mean, absolutely. I think I'm really pleased you mentioned that because there's a lot of fear, there's a lot of stories going around, there's a lot of theories about why and what this is going on here. And for myself, I prefer to deal with this is the reality. We're in this situation. Whatever the cause of it, whatever the meaning we choose to make from it. And I have a prayer that we choose to make meaning which dignifies the suffering of people who do suffer directly from this situation. And there are many people losing loved ones. And of course, it was like that well before this pandemic. But it's very important to have and to create individually with your loved ones as a community a vision for the future that is not apocalyptic, that is not Hollywood terror and zombie filled and all of those visions of the future which tend to, sell a lot of tickets and put bums in movie theatres, but at least in the old days. But we need a vision of the future which is an evolution of where we are as a species that has learned more about our responsibilities to one another, to our environment, and the joy of taking responsibility, of recognizing ourselves as part of this interconnected web of life, to be able to see a future where there is justice in the world, where healthcare is available for everybody, regardless of who or what they come from, or where they are, or what country, or what first world, second world, third world. It's one world. And we need to wake up to that. And we need a vision of how that will look. And we need our shamans and our artists and our economists and our healers and our songwriters and our all the people who work, the potters and the school teachers, to everybody and politicians, to look and work for the creation of a vision of the future that makes us proud, that gets us up in the morning with a smile on our face, with meaning in our lives. And the best way I know to do that is to empty out the mind by moving the body. That was one of Gabrielle Roth's, one of our central teachers, one of her beautiful pithy phrases. The best way to still the mind is to move the body. And when the mind becomes still, it's a bowl. And when the body is moving, the mind becomes like a bowl that can then receive information from a higher source, from not just from above, but from the ground, from the four directions, from the wind, from the rhythm, from our own creative soul. And yes, when we are able to experience the effect of that vision in the body, how good it feels, how, even though it's a dream that hasn't happened yet, indigenous people say that as soon as we've dreamt something, it's only a matter of time before it comes into physical reality. And the body is it's the garden in which the soul grows its offerings. So absolutely, to bring vision into the body, and that's what movement medicine is all about, to bring your vision of who you are, of who we are in our one-to-one relationships, who we are in terms of our relationship with the community, who we are in terms of our ancestors and our descendants and the non-physical world, and who we are in terms of our relationship with the great mystery itself. Those are the roots of movement medicine practice, and we are super excited to share that medicine wheel with people through this study hub. And yeah, do look us up if you're interested.
Yeah. Oh, Yaacov, thank you so much for that. Empowering our visions together as a collective. There's so many of us can feel the new earth. It's already here, and that's why a lot of us are so excited. And yes, that doesn't take away from the fact that there's so much suffering going on. We know that, and our hearts go out to people that are having to manage that and handle that. So much compassion. There's a lot of compassion coming through for everybody right now. But together we can do this. We are doing this. I mean, the global meditation at the weekend shows us how many people are on board for this. And your dance could have started all that off. That was how I prepared for it, which is brilliant. So thank you. How can people find out more about 21 Gratitudes and everything else you do?
Well, the best way to find us is www.darling, as in I love you, my darling, Khan, KHAN.com. If you find us there, you'll find the links to all of our work. And then if you're interested in the study hub, that's www.21gratitudes.com. And you'll find all the information there. And we're going to be putting out more online ceremonies. The next one is May the 2nd. That's free to members, but it's also open to non-members, but it's a much better deal if you join the membership site. So find us there, and please come and say hello, and we'll look forward to meeting you in this virtual space and learning together.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much once again for being part of Chi Time as well. So appreciate your presence.
You're welcome. Thank you very much as well. Thank you very much for the invitation, and just to all of you listening and watching, I wish you well. I hope you have real good health and your families are well and healthy and looked after, and you have what you need so that you can find in this time more of what's yours to give. And let's stay connected and stay moving. Thank you.
And keep your chi up, my friends. Of course. Bye for now.